The woman on the phone asked me to confirm a name. Not Jess's name, mine. "And you're the emergency contact," she said. Not a question. She was reading it off a form. I could hear paper, and the clack of a keyboard, and the particular flatness of someone who has said this sentence 400 times before lunch. "Yeah," I said, "that's me." I was standing in my kitchen. The kettle was halfway to boiling and I'd forgotten about it, which is the kind of thing I do when something quietly tips sideways. There was a grading stack on the counter, 26 essays about whether the New Deal worked. I teach history. I'd been about to mark them when the phone went off with a number I didn't know. "My name is Will. I'm 34. I've spent the last 12 years being best friends with Jess, and in all that time I had never once seen the inside of her medical paperwork, and now a stranger was reading me my own name off it, like it was the most ordinary fact in the world." "Great," the woman said. "So she's scheduled for the rotator cuff repair Thursday morning, 7 a.m. arrival. Someone needs to drive her. Someone needs to be here when she wakes up, and she'll need help at home for a week or two. Will that be you?" I said yes before I'd thought about any of it. That's the thing nobody tells you about being someone's person for 12 years. You stop deciding. You just answer. The yes was already out of my mouth and standing in the room before I'd run a single calculation about my classes, my apartment, my Thursday. Then I hung up and stood there. The kettle started screaming, and I turned it off. Let me tell you about the friendship, because you have to understand the friendship before any of the rest of it makes sense. 12 years. We met at a mutual friend's birthday thing, where neither of us knew anyone except the friend, and we ended up on a balcony talking about a documentary we'd both seen and both hated for the exact same reasons. By the end of the night, we had each other's numbers. By the end of the month, we had a standing Sunday thing. By the end of the year, we were the kind of friends where you don't knock. She's seen me at my worst. The bad breakup at 26, where I slept on her couch for a week and she pretended not to notice I wasn't sleeping. The semester I almost quit teaching. The funerals, 2 of them, where she stood next to me in a borrowed black coat and held my arm and said nothing, which was exactly right. She knows the exact face I make before I lie, and she's never once let me get away with it. And I know hers. I know she hums when she's nervous and goes very still when she's actually upset. I know she takes her coffee like a war crime. I know the names of every plant in her apartment and which ones are dying. People always asked, you know how people are, the aunt at the wedding, the new coworker, the cab driver, one time for no reason, so are you two together, and we had a whole routine for it. She'd say we're basically family, which is true, and I'd say we tried it in another life and it didn't take, which is a joke, and everybody would laugh, and that was the end of it. Basically family. That phrase did a lot of heavy lifting over the years. I'm only seeing now how much. Because here's what basically family let us do. It let us off the hook, both of us, for 12 straight years. She didn't have to put herself out there on some terrible app and sit across from a stranger and hope. She had me, which meant her Saturdays were already taken and her Sundays were already taken. She had someone to call when the car broke down and someone to eat with when the day was bad. And so the real thing, the scary thing, the thing where you let a person see you and risk that they leave, she just never quite got around to it. Neither did I. I told myself I was busy. I told myself the job was demanding, which it is. I told myself I just hadn't met anyone, which sounds reasonable until you notice you've stopped looking. It's very easy to feel full when someone already takes up the chair across from you. You don't go hungry, so you never notice you've forgotten how to feed yourself. There was a woman a few years back, Sophie. It was good for a while, and then it wanted to become a real thing, the kind with a future attached, and I found 100 quiet reasons it couldn't, and not one of them was honest. I didn't see it then. I told everyone the timing was wrong. Jess made me soup the week it ended, and we watched 4 bad movies in a row, and she never asked a single hard question, and I loved her for it, and I never wondered why she didn't ask. The bike accident was 3 weeks ago. A car door. Some guy not looking, swinging it open into the bike lane, and Jess going over the handlebars at the worst possible angle. She walked away from it, sort of, with her arm wrong. The kind of wrong that an X-ray turns into words like full-thickness tear and surgical repair and recovery timeline. Told me about it the way she would, which is sideways and downplayed. It's nothing. It's a sling thing. They might do a little procedure. A little procedure, that's Jess. She would describe a house fire as a warm evening. So I hadn't been worried exactly, until the form. You don't really know where you stand with someone until you're a line on the document that matters. Friends share dinners and inside jokes and 1,000 small Tuesday nothings. But the emergency contact box is different. That box is the question of who they expect to be in the room when it goes badly. Whose name they'd say if they couldn't say their own. And mine was in it. Not her mother. Her mother lives 2,000 miles away, and they talk twice a year on holidays and one of their birthdays. And even then it's careful. Not a sister. She doesn't have one. Not a boyfriend. There hasn't been one in a long time, for reasons I was apparently part of and had never thought about hard enough. Me. I called her that night. You didn't tell me it was surgery, I said. A pause. I could picture her exactly, on the couch, knees up, the bad arm in the sling already, the good hand holding the phone against her ear. I told you it was a procedure. Jess. It's an outpatient thing, Will. They knock you out, they fix the tendon, they send you home with a sling and a pamphlet. People do it all the time. They had me confirm I'm your emergency contact. The pause this time was longer. Yeah, she said finally, in a voice that had gone quiet. Is that a problem? And there it was. That little crack in her voice, the one she'd never let most people hear. The bravado dropping for half a second, and underneath it, just a person who didn't want to ask for help and was about to have to anyway. No, I said, it's not a problem. Because I can put down my neighbor, she offered. She's a little intense, but she's around. Or there's that woman from my book club who I think likes me more than I like her, which is a whole thing. Or honestly, I could probably just… Jess. What? It's not a problem. Stop trying to give the spot away. It's mine. I'll be there Thursday. I heard her breathe out, slow, like she'd been holding it for a while. Okay, she said. And I'm staying with you after. Will, you don't have to. You can't lift your arm. You can't drive. You can't put on a shirt. You told me yourself you'd need help for 2 weeks, and you don't have anyone else within 2,000 miles, so I'm staying in your spare room, and that's the end of it. Silence on the line. Then a small laugh, the real one, the one that's mostly air. You're going to be unbearable about this, she said. Completely. You're going to color-code my pills. They're already color-coded in my head, and I haven't even seen them. She laughed again, longer this time, and then she said thank you, twice, and that she meant it, in the careful way she says things she doesn't want to need to say. Don't thank me, I said. It's already done. I drove her to the hospital Thursday at 6 in the morning, still dark, the roads empty in that way that makes a city feel like it's holding its breath. She didn't say much, and neither did I. She hummed once, under her breath, 2 bars of something, then caught herself and stopped, and I pretended I hadn't heard it, because that's a thing you learn to do over 12 years. You learn which silences to leave alone. The waiting area was the color of nothing. They always are. Beige chairs bolted to the floor, a TV mumbling the weather to no one, a vending machine that only took exact change in a year when nobody carries change. They gave her a clipboard with more forms, and I watched her try to fill them out left-handed, the pen scratching and slipping across the page, and I took it from her without asking and wrote while she read me the answers. Date of birth, then insurance, then a row of medical questions she answered with a tired no each time, and then the line again near the bottom of the page, emergency contact. She didn't say a name, she just looked at me. You know it, she said. So I wrote my own name in the box, in my own handwriting, for the second time in a week, and it was the strangest thing to be the person and the pen at once. To literally sign myself into someone's worst-case scenario. A nurse came and took her back. At the door she turned around, the gown too big, the sling pinned over it, her hair pulled back, and for 1 second, she looked younger than I'd ever seen her. Not the woman who downplays house fires, just Jess, standing there a little scared. Hey, she said, if I say anything weird coming out of the anesthesia, you have to promise to forget it. I will absolutely not forget it. I'm going to write it down and read it at your next birthday. She almost smiled. Will. I'll be right here, I said. I'm not going anywhere. She nodded. And then she was through the door, and it swung shut behind her, and I sat back down in the beige chair under the mumbling weather and waited. 3 hours. I didn't grade a single essay. I'd brought the stack thinking I would. I just held my phone and watched the door and thought about the box with my name in it, and what it meant that out of everyone she'd ever met, everyone she'd worked with, and dated and laughed with, for 34 years, the name she trusted to be in the room when she was helpless was mine. I thought it meant we were close. There was a moment, around the second hour, where something almost surfaced, a question with a shape I didn't like. Why me, really, and not just because I was convenient? Why not the book club woman, or the intense neighbor, or anyone with a normal life she could borrow for a morning? I felt the question come up like a name on the tip of your tongue, and I did what I'd been doing for years without knowing I was doing it. I let it go back under. I told myself I was tired. I checked the door again. I genuinely thought, sitting in that chair with cold coffee going colder in my hand, that the form was just a measure of how good a friend I was. That it was about logistics and proximity, and the fact that I was the one without a wife and kids to rush home to. I thought I understood the whole of it. I thought I had her figured out 12 years ago, and that nothing left could surprise me. I had no idea. She came out groggy and pale with her arms strapped to her chest, and she looked at me from the gurney and said, completely serious, "Did you forget it yet?" And I said no, and she said, "Good, don't," and fell back asleep. The nurse laughed. I didn't, because something in my chest had gone tight and I couldn't have said why. I drove her home slow, taking the corners gentle so the seatbelt wouldn't pull on the sling. I carried her bag up. I helped her out of her shoes because she couldn't bend right and got her settled on the couch with the pillows arranged the way the discharge paper said, and lined up the orange bottles on the kitchen counter, and yes, color-coded them, and she watched me do it from across the room with an expression I didn't have a name for and couldn't quite hold her eyes through. Then I went back to my apartment and I packed a bag. I'm telling you this part plainly because it deserves to be plain. I packed 2 weeks of clothes. I packed my charger and my razor and the bad novel I'd been not reading for a month. I packed the grading I'd never get to, with my own quiet apartment and my own easy distance still inside it, and I drove the 11 minutes to Jess's building, knowing I wasn't coming back to easy for a while. The spare room had a bed, a lamp, and a window that faced the parking lot. I put the bag down. I sat on the edge of the mattress and listened to her moving around in the next room. The soft drag of slippers, the clink of a glass, the small sounds of a person who normally manages everything alone and now couldn't. For 12 years we'd had a door between us. Not a real one. The kind made out of going home at the end of the night. The kind that let us be everything to each other right up until it got too close, and then we'd say goodnight, and drive back to our separate lives, and call it friendship. And it worked. God, it worked so well. We'd built a whole comfortable decade on that little exit. And now I'd packed a bag and walked through it, and there was no version of the next 2 weeks where I got to go home and put the distance back. You can keep a lot of things from a person across a phone line and a Sunday dinner. You can't keep them when you're sleeping 11 feet away and watching them try to button a shirt they can't button. I lay down on the spare bed that first night and stared at a ceiling I didn't know and thought I knew exactly what I was in for. 2 weeks of meds and dishes and bad daytime TV. Helping a friend, easy. I had no idea what you start to notice about a person when you can't leave. You start with the small stuff. The way she takes her tea. I knew that already, 12 years I knew it. But I'd never made it for her at 6 in the morning while she stood in a doorway with one arm and a face still creased from the pillow. There's a difference between knowing a thing and being the one who does it. Knowing is a fact you keep in a drawer. Doing it puts the fact in your hands every single day until it stops being a fact and starts being a habit. And a habit is a much more dangerous thing to carry around. The first morning was the wound. The discharge paper had a section about the dressing. Change it daily. Watch for redness. It made it sound like nothing, the way those papers do. They never tell you that you'll be sitting on the edge of a bathtub at 7 a.m., holding a square of gauze while your best friend tries not to look at her own shoulder. You don't have to do this, she said. Who else is going to? I could call a nurse. You could, or you could let me and save the money and stop being weird about it. She let me. She turned a little on the closed lid of the toilet. The robe slipped off the one shoulder, and I knelt down and looked at it properly for the first time. The incision. The little blue stitches. The skin around it, angry and bruised in a yellow-green that meant healing even though it looked like the opposite. I'd seen Jess in a swimsuit 100 times. At the lake. On that trip to the coast. This was not that. This was the part of her she couldn't reach. Turned toward me because she had no other option. And there's a strange weight to being trusted with the back of someone's shoulder. The places people can't see on themselves are the places they let almost nobody touch. I cleaned it the way the paper said, slow. My hands were steadier than I expected them to be. She watched the wall the whole time, humming 2 bars of something, low, the nervous hum, and this time I didn't pretend not to hear it. I just worked, and let her hum, and taped the new gauze down at the corners the way you'd seal something you wanted to keep. Done, I said. She let out a breath. That wasn't as bad as I thought. I'm gentle. It's a gift. You're really not, normally. For you I am. I said it without thinking, the way you say 100 things over 12 years. But it sat in the bathroom a second longer than it should have. She pulled the robe back up over the shoulder and stood, and I stood, and the room was very small, and we both did that thing where you find somewhere else to put your eyes. Tea, I said. Tea, she agreed. And we went to the kitchen, and it was fine. Nobody warns you about the jokes. When you can't leave a person, the jokes don't stop. You've got 12 years of jokes. They're the language. But the jokes start landing in a room with no exit, and a joke with no exit is a different animal. We had a bit, an old one, about her being helpless. It started years ago when she couldn't open a jar and called me over to do it like it was an emergency. And I came, because I'm an idiot, and we'd done the bit ever since. She'd hold something up and go, "I'm so helpless," in this damsel voice, and I'd sigh like a man greatly burdened and do the thing. Now she actually was helpless. One arm. And the bit didn't work anymore because it wasn't a bit. The second day she held up a water bottle she couldn't open and started the voice, "I'm so help," and then the words just ran out of her, and she looked down at the bottle and then back up at me with no joke left in her face at all. "It's not funny when it's real," she said. "No." "Open my water anyway." I opened her water. We figured out the logistics like two people diffusing something. She couldn't sleep flat, so the couch became the bed, propped up on 3 pillows with the sling strapped on. I took the spare room. There was a wall between us and not much else. I learned the sounds of her not sleeping, the shift of weight, the quiet sigh when the shoulder caught wrong. Twice that first week, I heard it at 3 in the morning and lay there in the dark deciding whether to go check, and twice I didn't, because going to check at 3 a.m. is a sentence you can't unsay. Cooking I could do. Cooking gave my hands somewhere to be. I made the things she likes, the pasta with too much garlic, the soup. I'm not a good cook, but I'm a determined one, and there's a kind of caring that only knows how to come out as food. So I fed her. I'd put the bowl down in front of her on the couch and cut things up small so she could manage them one-handed without making a thing of it, and she let me, and she stopped saying, "Thank you" every time, which was its own kind of progress. You only stop thanking someone when you've decided to let them all the way in. The meds were a schedule, and I am a man who loves a schedule. I had them lined up on the counter exactly like I'd promised. The anti-inflammatory with food. The other one every 6 hours, set as alarms on my phone, and when the alarm went off, she'd hold out her good hand without looking up from the TV, and I'd drop the pill into her palm like we'd been doing it our whole lives. We had a rhythm to it by day 4. The alarm, then the open hand, then the pill, then the water, and the small nod. It scared me a little how fast we found the rhythm, how easy it was to slot into being a unit. Like the shape was already cut, and we'd just never set ourselves into it before. And the touching. I have to be honest about the touching, because that's where it got complicated. It was all necessary. None of it was anything. I had to steady her getting off the couch, a hand under the good arm. I had to help her with the sling straps, my fingers at the back of her neck working the buckle while she held still and breathed. I had to brush her hair back once when it fell across the wound and she couldn't move it herself. And I tucked it behind her ear, and my hand was at her jaw for half a second too long, and I took it back too fast, and we both pretended that was normal too. 12 years and I'd touched Jess plenty. Hugs. The arm grab when something's funny. The hand on the shoulder at the funerals. But that was touching across the door. And a hand on a neck at 9 at night when she smells like the same shampoo she's used for a decade is not the same as a hug. Goodbye in a parking lot. The first one is goodbye. The second one is good night, and good night is a whole different country. I noticed, that's the word for it, I started noticing. I noticed she has a freckle just under her left ear. 12 years and I'd never seen it because I'd never had a reason to be that close for that long. I noticed she bites the inside of her cheek when she's concentrating. I noticed the exact sound she makes settling into the pillows, half a sigh and half a word, and I noticed I'd started listening for it before I'd even decided to. You can't unnotice a thing. That's the whole problem. Once you've seen the freckle, you can't make yourself not know it's there. My brother called on the 5th day. Danny, younger by 4 years and getting married in 3 weeks, and I'm the best man, which means my phone had been a steady drip of wedding logistics for 2 months. Seating charts, the suit fitting I kept rescheduling, the speech I hadn't started. "You ghosting me," he said, instead of hello. I needed an answer on the boutonnieres yesterday. "I don't know what a boutonniere is, Danny." "It's the flower, the little flower on the jacket." "Then put a little flower on the jacket. You don't need me for the flower. I need you for all of it. That's the entire job of a best man." A pause. Where even are you? You sound weird. There's an echo. I'm at Jess's. I'm staying here a couple weeks. She had surgery. She can't manage on her own. The pause this time was a different kind of pause. I knew it before he said anything. I've known Danny his whole life. I could hear him deciding to start. You're living with Jess. I'm staying in her spare room. She has a torn rotator cuff. Huh. Don't. I didn't say anything. You said uh-huh. I know what your uh-huh means. He laughed, the easy laugh, the one he's always had, the one I never quite learned. Danny took every risk I didn't. He asked out the girl across the lecture hall the day he met her, and that's Maria, and that's the wedding. He moved cities for a job with no safety net, and it worked out. He says what he means at the exact moment he means it, which is a thing I watch him do the way you watch someone do a backflip. I understand the mechanics of it. I just can't make my own body leave the ground. I'm only saying, Danny said, that you've been Jess's whatever you are for 12 years, and now you're playing house and you're going to call it nothing, and I'm going to listen to you call it nothing, like I have for 12 years. It's not nothing. She's hurt. I'm helping. That's not what I mean, and you know it. I switched the phone to my other ear. In the next room I could hear the TV, low and Jess shifting, and the small sound. You're 34, Will, he said, gentler now. Maria's got a whole list of single friends for the wedding. She keeps asking me who to seat you next to, and every time I tell her don't bother, my brother's not actually single. He just won't admit who it's with. That's not fair. Tell me I'm wrong. I didn't. That's the thing about Danny. He doesn't argue. He just leaves the silence open and waits for you to fall into it. And I almost did, standing in my best friend's hallway with her water bottle still in my hand from the kitchen, and the freckle under her ear that I now knew about, and 12 years of basically family stacked up behind me like a wall I'd built, so I'd never have to find out what was on the other side of it. I have to go, I said. Her alarm's about to go off. Course it is, he said. You set an alarm for her pills. I color-coded them too. Don't start. He was laughing when I hung up. I stood in the hallway a second. The alarm hadn't actually gone off. I'd lied to my brother to get off the phone, which is a thing I do when someone gets too close to the shape of it, and I was just starting to understand that I'd been doing it for years, to everyone about her. A small lie here, a change of subject there, a whole decade of getting off the phone right before the real question. I went back in. She was watching some cooking competition, the volume low, her feet tucked under a blanket. Who was that? She said. Danny. Wedding stuff. How's the speech? Unwritten. Aggressively unwritten. You'll do it the night before in a panic, and it'll be perfect. And everyone will cry, and you'll act like that was the plan. That is exactly the plan. She smiled, eyes still on the TV. I know you. And that landed too. I know you. She said it light, the way you say it 1,000 times, but I heard it different now. The way I was hearing everything different, and I had to go do something in the kitchen that didn't need doing. It came to a point on the 8th night. She'd been good all day, but the evenings were when the shoulder got tired and the brave face slipped. I'd made the pasta we'd eaten on the couch with a movie neither of us was watching. And, around 10, she tried to get up to go to the bathroom and the angle was wrong, and she made a small sound, a real one, and sat back down hard and pressed her lips together. Hey, I said, easy. I'm fine. You're not. Let me. I came around the couch and put a hand under her good arm to lift her, and she came up too fast and lost her balance for a second, and I caught her. Both hands, one at her waist, one at her back, and she caught the front of my shirt with her good hand to steady herself, and then we were just standing there. Closer than we'd ever stood. Her face was right there. I could see the freckle. I could see she'd stopped breathing for a second, the same as me. Her hand was still fisted in my shirt.
And she wasn't using it to push away. The TV was talking to itself behind us.
Somewhere in the building a door closed, and neither of us moved, and the not moving went on a half-second too long, and then a full second, and the air did something it had never done in 12 years of parking lots and Sunday dinners. It went thin, like the whole apartment had leaned in to listen. Jess, I said. She looked up at me. Her eyes went over my face like she was reading something she'd somehow never read before. Her mouth opened. She started to say a word, just the front of it, a soft sound that could have been my name, or could have been the start of something neither of us could ever take back. Will I, she said. And then her phone buzzed on the cushion loud. The pill alarm, the real one this time, the 6-hour one, going off right against her leg. We both jerked at it like it was a fire alarm. She let go of my shirt. I let go of her waist. The moment fell apart in our hands and we let it, because letting it was easier than the other thing. And I reached down and grabbed the phone and silenced it and went to get the water and the pill, glad to have somewhere to put my hands and my face. When I came back, she was sitting down again, very upright, looking at the TV like it owed her money. I gave her the pill and the water, and she took them with a small nod the way she had every night that week. But the nod was different now. We both knew it was different. Whatever had just almost happened was still in the room with us, sitting in the third chair nobody ever used. And we couldn't make it leave, and we couldn't quite look at it either. She didn't finish the sentence. Will I? I lay awake that night on the other side of the wall, and I could not stop hearing the two words she'd started and the word she hadn't, and I knew, the way you know a thing you've spent years not knowing on purpose, that I was going to spend a long time wondering how that sentence ended. I didn't sleep much, and when I did, I dreamed nothing useful, and by morning I'd made a decision. The decision was to act like the night before had never happened. It's a good decision. It's worked for me my whole life. So I got up before her alarm, and I made the tea, and I had the gauze and the tape laid out on the counter like a man with nothing on his mind but logistics. When she came out, the robe pulled up high and careful over the shoulder this time, I said good morning the way you say it to a coworker. Light and flat, with nothing in it. Morning, she said back, same voice, the exact same flat, careful voice I just used on her. And I understood, standing there with the kettle still ticking, that she'd made the same decision I had. We'd both woken up and chosen the wall, without talking about it. 12 years of practice, and we'd defended the same border at the same hour from opposite sides of it, and neither of us had to say a word. It should have been a relief. We dodged it. We'd done the thing we were both good at, which was nothing, and we'd done it in perfect sync, like two people who'd rehearsed. It felt like watching a door close that I'd been the one to shut. The wound was the test that morning, and I failed it quietly. I knelt down and did the dressing the way I'd done it for a week, except my hands weren't steady the way they'd been steady, and I was very careful now not to let my fingers rest anywhere they didn't have to. In and out. Clinical. The whole time I kept my eyes on the gauze, like the gauze was the only thing in the room, and she kept hers on the wall, humming nothing, and the silence we made together had a new shape to it. It wasn't the easy silence of two people who don't need to talk. It was the held silence of two people being very, very careful, which is the loudest silence there is. You can hear a held silence from across a room. It has a pressure to it. We sat in it like it was weather. Looks good, I said. The redness is down. Good. You're healing fast. Good, she said again, and there was under that word I didn't reach for, because reaching for it was the one thing I'd decided not to do. I decided it at 4 a.m, staring at her ceiling, which is not the ceiling I'd have picked to stare at, and I was sticking to it. We were polite to each other for 3 days. That's the part nobody tells you about an almost. Everyone thinks the dangerous moment is the moment itself, the held look, the half-said word, the hand that doesn't let go. The dangerous part is the days after, when you both pull back so hard and so politely that the politeness becomes its own confession. You can't fake nothing with somebody who's known you 12 years. The nothing comes out wrong. It comes out stiff. It comes out sounding exactly like a thing being hidden. We started saying please and thank you again, the full versions, the careful ones we dropped weeks ago, and every please was a little brick going back into a wall we'd both half knocked down without meaning to. She started doing more for herself. One-handed things she shouldn't have been doing yet. I'd come in and find her wrestling the blanket with her good arm, or trying to reach a glass on the second shelf with her fingertips, the good shoulder straining, and I'd move to help and she'd say, I've got it. Not unkind, just final, and I'd stop. Because what she was really saying was, I don't want to need you that much right now. And I heard it clear as anything, because I was building the same thing on my side of the apartment. Less hovering, fewer alarms set on my phone. I let her hold out her own hand for the pill instead of putting it in her palm the way we'd done it all week. Small retreats. A whole quiet campaign of them, the two of us, undoing in 3 days the thing it had taken us 11 to build. We were getting good at it. That was the worst part. We were getting good at being less to each other. The move-out date was the thing neither of us would name. 2 weeks. That was the deal from the start. She'd be cleared by the follow-up, the sling would come off or mostly off, and I'd take my bag back to my own apartment across town, and we'd go back to being whatever we'd been. Sunday dinners, texts about nothing at 11 at night. The arm grab when something on the TV got funny. The safe version, the one with the wall in it. And the follow-up appointment was on the calendar on her fridge in her own handwriting, circled twice in blue pen, and every time I opened the fridge for the milk I saw the circle, and every time I shut the fridge a little faster than I needed to, like the circle might get out. Day 11, she said it out loud, finally, while I was doing the dishes. The doctor's Thursday, she said, to my back. If the cuff's healing like he thinks, I'm basically clear. Sling comes off, I can drive again. That's great. I kept washing the pan I'd already washed. So you can have your life back. I turned the water off. I didn't turn around right away. The pan was very clean. The pan was the cleanest pan in the city. It hasn't been a hardship, Jess. She stopped. I heard her shift on the couch, the small, careful sound of a person moving a shoulder that still hurts. You've got the wedding, the speech. You can't write a best man speech in my spare room with my TV going. I write better with your TV going. I meant it as a joke. It didn't come out as a joke. It came out as the truest thing I'd said in 3 days. And it just sat there in the kitchen between us. And I finally turned around and she was looking at me. And for 1 second, the careful was gone from her face and something else was there. Something open. And then she put the careful back on like a coat she'd left by the door. Thursday, she said again. It'll be good to have my space back too. Sure, I said. Neither of us believed the other one. We just agreed to keep pretending, the way you keep clapping for a song you're sick of, because stopping would make a scene. We were so good at not making a scene. We'd never once in 12 years made a scene. I was starting to think that was the whole problem. The wedding pulled me out of the apartment on day 12, and I was glad to go, which tells you everything you need to know about where my head was. It was the suit fitting, the one I'd rescheduled 4 times, and Danny met me at the place downtown. And I stood up on the little carpeted platform while a tailor put pins in things, and Danny sat in the chair watching me with his arms crossed, and a look on his face I knew too well from a lifetime of being his older brother. You look like a man going to his own funeral, he said. It's a tight collar. It's not the collar. I watched myself in the 3-way mirror, the 3 of me, all of us refusing to say anything to each other. How's Jess? He said. Healing. Sling comes off Thursday and I move home Thursday. Huh. He let it sit there a while. The tailor pinned my sleeve. You don't sound happy about going home. I have an apartment, Danny. People go home to their apartments. That's how living works. Sure it is. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and dropped his voice so the tailor couldn't hear. Can I ask you something and you not get weird about it? No. What happened over there? I looked at him in the mirror. He wasn't laughing now. The easy was gone off his face, the easy that's always there, and what was under it was just my brother, 4 years younger than me, looking at me steady the way I'd been refusing to look at the floor. Nothing happened. Will. Nothing happened. I stopped. The tailor was down at my ankle, and I waited until he moved off toward the table. There was a night. She tripped getting up off the couch. I caught her, and for a second it was something. And then her phone went off, and it wasn't, and we both decided by morning that it never been, and that's it. That's the whole story. There's no story. Danny didn't say anything for a moment. He looked at his hands. Then he said the thing I haven't been able to put down since. You know what I was most scared of with Maria, before any of it? What? Not that she'd say no. I could have lived through a no. People live through no every day. He turned his wedding ring hand over, looked at the band like it still surprised him. I was scared she'd say yes, and then I'd have her. And then there'd be something real to lose. He shrugged, like it was a small thing and not the largest thing a person can say in a tailor's shop. When she's just your friend, you can't lose her. There's nothing to lose. She's already half yours and half not yours, and it just stays that way forever, and it's safe. The second you ask for the whole thing, you're holding something that can break in your hands. I stood very still on the platform. The pins held my jacket in a shape that wasn't mine yet. So I get it, he said. You found the safe version of Jess 12 years ago and you've been guarding it ever since like it's the last one on Earth. I'm not even mad at it. It's smart. It's the smartest play in the world. You never lose the game if you never put a chip down. He stood up, buttoned his own jacket out of habit, met my eyes in the glass. It's just not the same thing as being happy. That's the only catch with it. That's the fine print. The tailor told me to hold still. I was already holding still. I'd been holding still for 12 years and only just noticed I'd never moved. I asked Maria out 40 minutes after I met her. Danny said, and I was sick the entire walk over to her table. Genuinely sick. I almost turned around twice. There's a crosswalk on 6th where I stood through 3 green lights talking myself out of it. And the only reason I crossed was I figured the worst thing that could happen to me wasn't her saying no. What was it? Getting to be 50 years old, sitting in some kitchen, and knowing I'd had the chance and been too much of a coward to find out. That was the thing that actually scared me. Not the no. The never knowing, the no you survive in a week. The never knowing you carry the rest of your life. He put his hand on my shoulder, the pinned one, careful of the pins, the way I'd been careful of her stitches all week. You've got a follow-up appointment too, brother. Yours is just with yourself, and you keep rescheduling it. And then he left me up on the platform in a half-pin suit, looking at 3 of me in the mirror, none of us with a single thing left to say back to him. I drove back to her place slow, took the long way on purpose. I needed the time and I knew it. Because Danny had named it. The thing I'd kept behind the wall for 12 years, he'd reached over and turned the light on, and now I could see it plain, and I couldn't unsee it any more than I could unsee the rest of her. The wall wasn't protecting the friendship. The wall was protecting me. From the one outcome I'd never once been able to look at straight, which was never her turning me down. It was her saying yes, getting the whole thing, and then standing to lose Jess in a way that 12 safe years had made impossible, because you cannot drop something you have been holding at arm's length on purpose for a decade. I'd kept her at arm's length the whole time, every Sunday, every text, so that I'd never have to learn what dropping her would feel like. I'd called it being a good friend. It was just being afraid in a shape that looked respectable. I sat in the car outside her building for a while, with the engine off and the heat ticking as it cooled. Tuesday. Day 12. The sling came off Thursday. I moved out Thursday. And after Thursday, the door closed and the wall back to its full height, and we went back to Sunday dinners and the safe, careful, half-a-thing version of the 2 of us that I had built with my own hands and called friendship, the version that had kept me from being lonely and kept me from being happy at the exact same time. For 12 years. And would go on doing both of those things for the next 12 if I let it walk out that door Thursday morning. I thought about Danny sick on a sidewalk through 3 green lights, not turning around. I thought about Jess upstairs, healing fast, getting good at needing me less, practicing it like a skill. I thought about the word she didn't finish. I'd spent 3 whole days deciding I'd never know how that sentence ended, and 3 days had been just long enough to teach me that the not knowing wasn't safe at all. The not knowing was only a slower way of losing her. The wall didn't keep her. The wall just guaranteed that whatever the 2 of us were, I would go to my grave never finding out if it could have been the whole thing. I went up the stairs. She was on the couch where she always was, the TV low, the blanket over her feet, the sling loose around the arm that was almost ready to be free of it. She looked up when I came in, and there must have been something on my face, because the careful look she'd worn for 3 solid days flickered, and underneath it I saw the thing I'd been too scared to look at since the night she caught the front of my shirt and didn't let go. "You're back early," she said. "Yeah." "How was the fitting?" I set my keys down on the counter. I didn't sit. My heart was doing the thing Danny described, the walking to Maria thing, the sick thing, the 3 green lights thing, and for once in my whole careful life I didn't try to make it stop. "Jess," I said, "I have to tell you something. And I need you to let me get all the way through it before you say anything, because if you stop me partway, I'm going to use it as an excuse to never start again. I know me, I'll get off the phone. I've been getting off phone for 12 years, and you're the person I've been doing it to." She went very still on the couch. The blanket, the loose sling, her good hand went flat on her knee and stayed there. "Okay," she said quiet. "I'm not going anywhere. I've got one working arm and nowhere to be." And for the first time in 12 years, with my keys still warm in my hand and the wall coming down brick by brick, I didn't change the subject. "There was a job," I said. That was how it came out. Not the way I'd practiced it in the car. 3 words, and then the rest of me caught up to them. 4 years ago. The Portland thing. You remember I went out there for the interview. She nodded, careful, her hand still flat on her knee. "I told you I turned it down because of my classes, the seniors, the AP load, all of it. I said I didn't want to leave them. Mid-year I heard my own voice go thin. That was true. It just wasn't why. I made myself keep going. Danny was right about me. If I stopped here, I'd find a reason to never start again, some logistics, some tea to make, some pan to wash twice. It was a good job, Jess. Better pay. Department head in 3 years, the guy said, and there was a woman out there, Claire. We'd been seeing each other almost a year by then. The long-distance thing, weekends. She was good. She wanted me to move. She'd found me listings. She had a whole life mapped out, and I was in all of it. Jess didn't move. The TV murmured something neither of us was hearing. And I sat in that hotel room the night before I flew home, and I had the offer letter on the desk, and I tried to picture it. The new city, the new job, her. And every single time I tried to picture being happy out there, the picture had a hole in it, and the hole was you. The word landed in the room and just stayed there. I didn't even let myself say it like that, not even to myself. I told myself it was the timing. I told Claire it wasn't the right move. And she cried, and she asked me if there was someone else, and I said no. I swallowed, and I wasn't lying exactly. There was just you, who I'd already decided wasn't a someone, who I'd filed under friend 12 years ago and never reopened the file, because reopening it meant admitting I'd built my whole life inside a 100-mile radius of a person I'd never had the guts to ask out. She made a small sound, no word in it, just air pushed out. I let her go. I let the job go. I came back here, and I had Sunday dinner with you that week, and you told me I made the right call about Portland, and I agreed with you, and I sat at your table and I had no idea I'd just turned my entire life down to keep sitting at it. My eyes were doing something I didn't have a plan for. So, that's the thing. That's what I've never told you. I didn't stay for the kids. I stayed for you. I've been staying for you for 12 years and calling it everything else. Then I stopped. I'd gotten all the way through it, the way I asked her to let me, and now there was nothing left in my hands and nowhere to put them. So I just stood there by her counter, keys cold now, waiting. For a long time she didn't say anything. She looked down at the blanket. Her jaw was working, the small muscle going at the corner of it, the way it did when she was holding a thing very carefully so it wouldn't spill. I'd watched her do it 100 times. I'd just never been the reason for it. "You want to know why you're my emergency contact," she said. It wasn't the answer I was braced for. I didn't say anything. "You think it's the old joke." She wasn't looking at me yet. The thing we used to say, me and you against the paperwork. Two people with no one official, so we made each other official. Ha ha. Her voice wasn't doing ha ha. "That's what you think it is. That's what I let you think it is." "Jess, let me get through it." A small, wet laugh. "You're not the only one who gets off the phone." I shut up. "When they handed me that form," she said, "in the office before the surgery, and the woman asked me who my person was, the one they call if some spot goes wrong on the table." She finally lifted her eyes. They were bright. I didn't think about it for 1 second. I wrote your name before she finished the sentence, and then I sat there in that plastic chair and I thought about why. She pressed her good hand flat against the blanket, like she was steadying herself on it. "It's not because you're the only one I trust to handle a crisis. My sister could handle a crisis. My mother, God help us, would handle a crisis like a general. It's not about competent." She took a breath. "It's because you're the only person on this earth I'd let see me at my actual worst. Drugged stupid, cut open, drooling on a pillow with my hair a disaster and a tube in my arm, saying things I won't remember. That's what an emergency contact is, Will. It's not the person you trust to be strong. It's the person you trust to see you wrecked and not think any less of you for it." Her chin gave the smallest shake, and there is one of those for me. One. I have got exactly one person I will let look at me when I'm that far from okay, and he is standing in my kitchen right now, telling me he gave up a whole life to keep having Sunday dinner here, like an idiot, like the biggest idiot God ever made. I came around the counter then. I didn't decide to. I just was there on the edge of the couch, close, my knee against the blanket. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" I said. "Same reason as you. Plain. No, can't lose your friend. There's nothing to lose. We figured that out years ago, both of us, without saying it, and she lifted the good shoulder and let it drop. We held still. It was safe. You hold still long enough, you forget you're choosing it. You start thinking it's just how you're built. Danny said almost that exact thing to me 3 hours ago. Danny's getting married. Danny knows something we don't. Danny stood through 3 green lights, too scared to cross a street, I said, and crossed anyway. She looked at me. The careful was gone now. All the way gone, for the first time in 3 days, longer than 3 days, maybe years, and what was under it wasn't dramatic at all. It was just Jess looking at me, tired and bright-eyed and not hiding. "So, what are we doing?" she said. "Right now, what is this?" I said, "we're stopping." "Stopping what?" "Holding still." She let out a breath that was half a laugh and half something else. Her eyes spilled over, finally 1 line down each side, and she didn't wipe them, and she didn't look away from me while they fell, which is the bravest thing I have ever watched a person do. "I'm bad at this," she said. "I'm going to be bad at this. I've spent 12 years being your friend. I don't know how to be the other thing. I'm going to do it wrong. You've got 1 working arm and no idea what you're doing. I felt my own face go. I've got no arms and no idea what I'm doing. We're a disaster and we're perfectly matched. That got the real laugh out of her. The covered mouth one. Except her good hand was busy, flat on my knee now, gripping, so she couldn't cover anything, and she just laughed with her whole open face, tears and all. And I have known her 12 years and I had never once seen her not cover it. I didn't kiss her. I want to be honest because the part, and everybody wants to go big. There wasn't a big. She had a healing shoulder and a face full of tears and a sling she'd be wearing 2 more days. And a grand gesture would have been about me, about making the moment look like the movies. So I just took her good hand off my knee and held it in both of mine, the way I'd held the gauze all week, careful, and I put my forehead down against the back of it. "Okay," I said into her knuckles. "Okay," she said back. And we sat there a while, her hand in mine, the TV talking to nobody, 2 people who'd spent a third of their lives at arm's length, finally not. We watched the rest of the show. I want to tell you something dramatic happened next, but nothing did, and that was the whole point. She fell asleep on my shoulder around the second ad break, the way she had 100 times before, except this time, when her head got heavy, I didn't slide a pillow under it and make my excuses about getting home. I stayed. I let my arm go numb. I sat in the blue light of her bad TV with her breathing slow against my side, and I thought, this is the thing. This is the whole thing I turned a life down for, and then spent 12 years refusing to actually pick up. Thursday came. The sling came off. I drove her to the follow-up, and the doctor pressed and prodded and pronounced the cuff healing clean, and she did the little careful rotations he asked for. The arm coming up by inches, free of the strap for the first time in 2 weeks. She looked at me across the exam room when she got it over her head, the arm all the way up, and grinned like a kid. And then we went home, to her place. I didn't move my bag out. It's not that I moved in. We weren't ready for that, and we knew it, and we said so out loud. The saying things out loud being the brand new skill we were both terrible at and practicing every day. It's that the move-out date came, the one circled twice in blue pen on her fridge, and we got to it. And we looked at each other, and neither one of us reached for the bag. The bag stayed by the door. Some nights I went to my apartment. Some nights I didn't. We were figuring out the math of it slowly, 2 people who'd skipped every step, and now had to walk back and take them one at a time, in order, the way you're supposed to. The wedding was 3 weeks later. I gave the speech. I'd finally written it in her spare room with her TV going, exactly like I said I couldn't. I stood up in that reception hall with the glass in my hand, and I told 200 people about my little brother standing through 3 green lights on 6th Street, too scared to cross, and crossing anyway. I said the bravest thing I ever saw him do was want something out loud where it could be taken from him. I said most of us spend our lives keeping the people we love at a safe distance and calling it respect, calling it timing, calling it anything but fear. I said Danny never did that. I said Danny walked straight at the thing that scared him and built a marriage out of it. I did not say that I'd learned every word of it from him 40 minutes before I learned it from myself. Some things you let a man keep on his wedding day. Jess was at the table near the front, in a green dress, the arm that used to be in a sling resting easy on the white cloth. When I sat back down, she leaned over and put her mouth near my ear. "You crossed your street," she said. "Took me 12 years and a torn rotator cuff. Worth the wait." Her hand found mine under the table. I'd have waited longer. I was planning to. Danny found me later, by the bar, loosened tie, 3rd drink, the happiest I'd seen him. "You took my whole bit," he said. "The green lights. That was mine. You gave it to me in a tailor shop. No takebacks." He looked over at our table, where Jess was laughing at something his new wife said, her head tipped back, mouth open, not covering it. "You finally made the appointment," he said. "Yeah. How was it?" He was grinning. "The one with yourself." I watched her across the room, the free arm, the open laugh. 12 years I'd had her in my life and kept the realest version of her on the other side of a wall I'd built and guarded and called friendship. Because a friend you cannot lose and a girlfriend you can, and I'd picked safe over true every single Sunday without once admitting that was the trade I was making. Terrifying, I told him. Best thing I ever did. I've thought about it a lot since, the difference between the 2 of us before and the 2 of us now, because on paper almost nothing changed. Same person, same couch, same bad TV, same Sunday dinners, the same arm grab when something on the screen gets funny. From the outside you'd barely know. But there's a wall down in the middle of it that used to hold the whole thing up, and the strange part, the part I keep turning over, is that the friendship didn't break when the wall came down. It got bigger. It turned out the wall was never holding the friendship up at all. The wall was just holding me back from it. So I know something now that I didn't know 2 weeks before that surgery. Being needed is easy. Anybody can be needed. You make yourself useful, you show up with the gauze and the pills and the tea, you handle the crisis, and people will need you all day long, and you can hide your whole heart behind every helpful thing you do. I'd been doing it for 12 years. Being needed had been my best disguise. Being seen is the hard one. Being seen means standing in someone's kitchen with your keys going cold in your hand and saying the true thing out loud where they can do anything they want with it. It means letting them watch your face while it falls apart. It means being the name on the form, not because you're strong, but because you're trusted with the worst of someone, and trusting them right back with the worst of you. She put my name down on that form because I was the one person she'd let see her wrecked, and it took me my whole adult life to understand that the bravest thing you can do for someone isn't to be the one they need. It's to let yourself be the one they see. So let me ask you something before you go. Is there a name you've kept on a form somewhere, in your phone, in your chest, that you've never said out loud what it really means? Someone you've filed away under friend, under safe, under not yet, because the wall is easier than the question. Have you ever held still that long, with someone right there telling yourself it was timing, when the truth was just that you were scared of how much you'd have to lose if you ever let yourself have the whole of it? I held still for 12 years. I want to tell you it was worth the wait, but mostly I want to tell you that you don't have to wait that long. If this one stayed with you, there are more stories like it here on the channel. Take care of your people, and tell them the true thing while you still can.